Hello and welcome to something completely different. If you guys are wondering where I've been, some real life things have come up in my life that have to take precedence over my YouTube and Twitch channels. And for that, that's why I've been gone for X amount of days, weeks, month. However, I do want to announce that I'm still working on the Call of Duty Zombies video. That will be out later this month at some point. In the meantime, however, I wanted to start up this series in which I talk about a certain video game or something that's going on in the industry itself. Simply, it's called Some Thoughts on X Thing, basically. So why don't we start off the first episode of this new series that I just thought up of with Battlefield 2042. The beta has just concluded, and if you're watching this video or listening to this video will be out on October 10th, 2021, the day after it's all been closed up again. Yeah, 2042, it's not good. And that's very disappointing. I was expecting a lot more from this game. I know that there's been the pandemic. I know that there's been things in the way that are out of the developer's control. But holy crap, this game is just not that good. It doesn't feel ready to be out in a month. It feels bad. And I know people are going to say, well, it's a beta. Guys, have you played Battlefield betas in the past? This happens all the time. The betas are basically the final product. This is what you're going to get, or very close to it, aside from maybe some mild bug fixes from here and there. So let me first talk about what's the good, at least. There is some good to 2042. First off, the tactical sprint is a great addition to the game. You now have two versions of the sprint. One is a normal sprint, one is a faster version of it. And the latter uses stamina. So that's a good addition. It's nice. It's good for pacing. I like a lot of the vehicles, the VTOL, just the transport vehicles in general, the transport helicopters. They are really fun to take control and be a part of because they feel like gun platforms. They have more presence on the map rather than just being a mobile spawn point. So they have some danger to them, and it's great when they're active and, you know, shooting at you. They do provide a bit of a challenge. I do appreciate the scale of the map. There was only one map that you could play, which was Orbital. Orbital is, it's not the best map, but I do appreciate the scale. I do appreciate in some way that it reminds me of Kimona from Ace Combat 4, but that's a whole different thing. I like the grapple hook. I like the zip lines that you can use in either direction. The foliage looks incredible as well. And I do also like the idea that they're trying to bring back Levolution and also enhance the weather effects. The tornado is hysterical, especially when you see all of the people trying to jump in and parachute in, and they're just spinning around and around and around. It's great. It's hysterical. But aside from that, this game is not that good. And that says a lot. I'm going to go off to the bad real quickly and give a little bit of thoughts on that, and then I'm going to address the elephant in the room, which was my Battlefield 5 video compared to this. So let's get to it. First off, the fact that it's now a character-based shooter. And this is weird because it's always been a class-based. You know, you had your assault, your medic, your support, your sniper. Easy as said and done. But now they've tacked in / forced in this character-based element where the characters don't feel impactful or interesting or anything like that whatsoever. They all feel very basic for the most part. It's like as if, the best way I can think of is if Siege basically was CSGO, verbatim basically. It feels very off. It doesn't feel genuine. The characters are not memorable. Their abilities are pretty lackluster for the most part. I don't remember their names. And what's worse is that they're indistinguishable, basically meaning that regardless of what side you're on, what faction you're on, they're all the same characters. And it just looks absolutely weird on Battlefield. And it gets annoying too, because I thought it was just me and just being old and dumb. Everyone is shooting at one another, teammate or enemy, because it's really hard to tell who's your teammate and who's an enemy now. I'm sorry, yeah, Battlefield had hard to recognize enemies for a while, but you could still kind of recognize them for the most part. I think it also doesn't help that this was a conquest-only beta. It just made the whole scenario even worse. So no one can recognize one another. And what's the point of it being a character-based? It's even weirder than that, because it's still somewhat a class-based shooter on top of all of that. The only real difference with the classes is that one has a grapple hook, one has a sentry turret, one has, I think the other one has like a health dart or something like that. And the last one has a recon drone, but those just feel like gadgets for the most part, but there's also gadgets in the game, which the gadgets menu has your health packs, your ammo. It has armor plating, which I think is a little bit too strong if you ask me. It soaks up too much damage. Yeah, it just feels off. It feels really, really weird for the most part. I don't like it at all, and I don't see a reason why it had to be a class-based, or not a class. It's not a class-based shooter. It's now a character-based shooter. Why is it a character-based? I can't remember any of the characters. All the characters are the same, regardless of faction. What's the point? What is the point of this? Is it just to confuse the audience? Because you did a good job at that. Because everyone's shooting at one another, teammate or enemy, so I don't know. My next issue I had with it is the Crisis-style attachments menu. They ditched the old customization menu of prior. Now they're bringing in this Crisis style where you have to add your attachments on the ground, basically. Now here's the thing. I do like it. I don't wish it was the only thing. I do like it. I don't want it to be the only way to customize weapons. I like it as an addition to the menu option of customizing your weapons, but you can't customize your weapons through the menu. So if I have a certain loadout in particular that I like on my gun that I just want to roll with and I don't want to worry about, I can't do that. If let's say it's a new match, for example, your attachments from your last game, that doesn't carry over. Your gun will be stripped of all those attachments. So let's say you spawn in a transport helicopter and you jump out and you get into a hot firefight, and you now have your gun, but it has none of the attachments you like. So you're frantically adding those. It doesn't make any sense. Why remove something that I intentionally put on there in the first place? Just let me have my gun the way I want it, for the love of God. Don't get rid of the Crisis style menu. I like it, but I don't want it to be the only thing, basically. The other issues I had with the game, there's very much a lack of damage. This has been a trend recently with recent Battlefields. 5 had a little bit of an issue with this as well, but they worked on patches and future maps would feature more destructibility. But for the most part, in 2042, there's not a whole lot of destruction going on with the buildings. And they don't feel bombastic. That's the thing that made Battlefield's destruction so fun and unique, was that it felt bombastic. There was debris and dirt, concrete, everything was flying all around. But here it just feels like, oh, there's a vent, you launch a missile at it and just pops. Okay, that's cool, whatever. The only real major destructive elements are the walls, which, yeah, the walls blow up, but they don't blow up interestingly. And then the rocket itself, it blows up if you want it to blow up, if everyone targets it. Nothing happens. Even when the tornado comes out, it doesn't feel like the cities, or the city. I'm thinking of the city map from the trailer. That would have been a more interesting map. But the whole map doesn't get torn up by the tornado that much. It doesn't feel like the tornado doesn't even have an impact on the map. Only it's just the fact that, oh, the tornado exists and you can fly in it. That's cool, but it doesn't have a presence at the same time. It's just there as a gimmick. and not really a fun. It's a kind of fun gimmick, but it's not an impactful gimmick to the map. So I feel like the destruction overall is just weak. It's the weakest it's been in the franchise. It's weaker than 5, and that's really heartbreaking to think about. I feel like there was other issues as well. The gameplay was very glitchy, especially the vehicle menu was incredibly problematic. There's now a tablet that you can pull out to drop down a ground vehicle, or you can call in a ranger, which is the robot dog thing. I like the idea, I just wish it worked. And it wasn't just that vehicle menu that I ran into issues with. The hybrid sites, for example, half the time it's a 50-50 chance if the hybrid sites work, meaning I can only use the ACOG and not the red dot site on top. I tried everything in a certain match, but then I'll go to the next match and maybe it'll work, or maybe it won't. Again, it's a coin flip. Why does it have to be a coin flip of all things? Hopefully that's something that can be easily patched, but again, it's just something that I have to bring up because that was my experience with the beta. And even driving the vehicles felt really odd too. They would bounce around, like they were jittery. That's what it was. It's not that they were bouncing, but they were jittery. I do like the weight of the vehicles. The weight feels good. They feel like the vehicles from Battlefield 5. They don't feel like super powerful, quick to aim vehicles. They're slow and cumbersome, and you have to accommodate that. Great, but they feel jittery to drive, and that's not fun to drive at all. There's already hackers in the game. I actually ran into a hacker who, he had like a clone of himself, basically. I don't know how to describe it, but there was a clone of himself, and I know I had perfect internet connection too. I looked at my ping and it was fine. It was like 15 or something like that, 15 milliseconds. But I remember there was a guy who I saw him on a rooftop and he was just frozen there. So I thought, oh, I'll just shoot him. And as soon as I shoot him, someone behind me who was actually turned out to be that guy shot at me and killed me. I don't know if that was just a netcode thing, even though I still saw that version of himself on the rooftop after I died. Again, I feel like it's already been reported that there's been hackers on the game already. And that's concerning because Battlefield 5 already had a terrible anti-cheat system. And yeah, I know that this game launches with easy anti-cheat. Doesn't seem to work that well, does it? I'm just saying. It's but the worst part about 2042, it feels mediocre altogether. I don't think it's the best looking Battlefield, honestly. You know how bad I think Battlefield 2042 looks? It looks like it's an update to Battlefield 4 and not an update to Battlefield 5. Battlefield 5 looks fantastic. And so did Battlefield 1. Those two games, how do those two games in particular look so much better than compared to 2042, which has had all these EA-backed developers and all this time? I just don't understand how it can look this subpar in comparison. But it's not just the visuals, it's the overall feeling of the game. Just something about it feels off. There's a very off feeling. There's all these decisions that could be interesting, could work, but they're sporadic and there's no focus to them. I think one example in particular is there's these vents that rain liquid nitrogen on characters, and their screens will get like all fogged up and frozen. That's great, but there's no consequence in just standing in it. If you stand in it, yeah, your screen gets all icy and everything, but you don't like die or take damage from it. You can stay under it indefinitely and you're fine. Again, the character-based thing, I have to bring that back up because if you want to have character-based, fine, but you can't have it where everyone's all the same character regardless of faction, and having those characters being so forgettable and even their abilities being super forgettable. I just don't understand why they would go in this direction. Is it just because Overwatch and games like it were so enthralling to people? I don't know. Is it because character-based shooters and character-based games are now the kind of hot topic, basically. Maybe, honestly. Again, it just feels tacked on. I don't like it. I don't think it works for Battlefield, especially on a large-scale game, especially for a large-scale game like Battlefield. It just doesn't work. That system does not work whatsoever. I don't know why they would go to these decisions. And now I feel like I have to bring up my Battlefield 5 video. And, you know, I will say, at the time of making that video, I did find Battlefield 5 to be a bit of a disappointment. You know, I felt like there was some really good ideas there, but there were some really off decisions at the same time. But I will say, in the last few months, I would say before the final, like in its final months of active support from DICE, I feel like it was getting a little bit better. Yes, I still wish to this day it had an Eastern European campaign. I still wish it had some more maps to it. But as an overall experience, Battlefield 5 is actually very good. And the fact that you can get it for so cheap nowadays is great. I just don't feel like 2042 is a proper upgrade to 5. Now, 5, and my point is, I think 5 honestly is a stronger game. Do I think it's the strongest? Hell no. If you want the strongest, you play 4 or 1, in my opinion. But compared to 2042, that game 5 is so much better to play. And that still has its own issues. It still doesn't have a great anti-cheat software. It still has the annoying cosmetics. Granted, at least they're cosmetics, you know, especially the characters, the elite characters they're called. At least those are just cosmetic and the game is not character-based. It's still the traditional class-based system for the most part. But 2042 isn't any of those things anymore. Now it's this character-based. Now it's all this mediocreness to it. I don't know. And I think part of the reason why it feels so mediocre is they had to optimize the game in a way so that way they can make the Battlefield Portal, which is where you can have all different genres of war mixed together. I think that's a really cool idea. I'm just concerned in how it'll be executed now. And honestly, is the beta, to me, compelling enough evidence for me to recommend people pick it up on day one? Honestly, no. I genuinely can't recommend it at this time. Sure, it's a beta. People are going to say, well, it's a beta. It's not the final product. Guys, if you've played a Battlefield beta before, you know that the beta is basically the final product. If anything, they're going to smooth out the glitches, the most egregious ones. So probably the vehicle menus, probably the jittering, probably the optimization. I don't know, though, if all that's patched out, is 2042, not the Portal, I'm talking 2042 alone, is 2042 a worthy Battlefield game? I just don't think so at this time. I don't think the map, as much as I liked it, I know a lot of people didn't like it. I didn't like it in certain spots. There's this underground tunnel in the middle of the map that you can take, but there's 2 sections of it in particular that are pitch black dark at one point, and you cannot see, and only some weapons can have a flashlight attachment. Not all of them, only some. Again, it's just baffling decision making. And I think Orbital was a really bad map to present the game that way. I wish we could have played the Battlefield Portal instead. I think that might have had a more positive feedback. But all across the board, it seems like people are not interested. They're disappointed, honestly. I don't blame them. I'm seeing clips everywhere where people are having issues. The PS5 version, my friend Casey was playing that version, and it looked awful. It was so much worse than the PC version. Yeah, I'm just not faithful. I'm not feeling hope for this entry in the game. And the worst part is that it could have been. Because if EA would get off their high horse, if, you know, the people behind it would just Give the game some space. If they would take the reception back from this beta and just say, okay, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, maybe we need to adjust some things, this could be a really interesting Battlefield experience. I'm genuinely curious about the portal. I just don't know about it any further because we didn't have access to it. And honestly, 2042 just doesn't feel that interesting in its current state, in the way that it's presented to me. I'm not enthusiastic to even install it. I have Origin Premiere. I can get day one EA games. But I don't feel inspired to install this. I'd rather just play 5 again. I'd rather play 1 again. I'd rather play 4 again. I really wish I could play Hardline, but I know that the Hardline servers don't really exist on PC. Now, do they? Honestly, the decision-making of 2042 is a mess. Hopefully they're going to listen. I don't think they will. Knowing the way that this game, the way that EA works, knowing how this whole franchise has gone in the past, I'm not hopeful. I'm genuinely not hopeful. I don't think the beta left a good impression. I think the game is very much still in a rough state. I personally believe the game should be not delayed by another month. I think it should be delayed by another 5 or even 6 months. Honestly, it needs more time in the oven. It needs to get rid of that character-based system. It's just baffling. Why do we have that character-based system? I can't stop going back to it. That's the annoying thing. I made a list and I told myself I would focus one section at a time, but I keep bringing it up because it's a huge problem. There's so much wrong with this game. I'm not inspired to play it. I'm sorry, I'm just not. Even with Origin Premiere, even with, you know, maybe you are a huge hardcore fan. Are you really that much of a hardcore fan to defend 2042? Is my question to you. Are you really that much of a hardcore fan to ignore all of those weird insights, all of those weird decision makings within the beta? I'm not talking about the glitchiness. I know the glitches can be patched out. I'm talking about the overall experience. Is that really compelling enough for you to buy this game day one, or install it day one, or even play it, you know, weeks after, months after launch? I'm not seeing it. I'm just not. I'd rather play, if I want to play a character-based related game, I'll play something else where the character-based system makes sense. Anyway, those are my thoughts on 2042. Thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you guys next time.